Behind the American dream, there is a fear most people never talk about. Every year, millions of Americans wake up, pay their rent, go to work, and ask themselves the same question. When will I finally own something? And the answer, for millions of them, is never. Every American child grows up hearing the same story: work hard, get educated, find a stable job, and then buy a house. That house is yours. That house is security. That house is proof that you made it. It was called the American dream. And for decades, it worked. But somewhere between then and now, something changed. The ladder was pulled up. The numbers stopped making sense. And the dream started looking less like a promise and more like a product being sold to people who couldn't afford it. Today, more than 44 million households in America rent their homes. That's over 1/3 of the entire country, paying rent every single month, building no equity, owning nothing. And that number is growing. Let me show you how the math works. The average American home today costs over $400,000. The median household income? Around $74,000 a year. Banks typically require a 20% down payment to get a mortgage without paying extra insurance fees. That's $80,000 up front, before a single mortgage payment, before property taxes, before closing costs. Now imagine, you save $1,000 a month, which for most Americans would be an extraordinary amount. It would take you over 6 years just to collect that down payment. 6 years. If you spent nothing else, no emergencies, no vacation, no broken car, no medical bill, and while you're saving, home prices keep rising. In the last 30 years, home prices in America have increased by over 300% in major cities. Wages? They've risen maybe 30%. The gap isn't closing, it's widening, every single year. For millions of Americans, home ownership isn't a goal they gave up on. It's a target that keeps moving away, no matter how fast they run. But it gets worse. Before most Americans can even start saving for a house, they're already buried. The average American college graduate enters the workforce carrying $37,000 in student loan debt. They are 22 years old. They owe $37,000, and they haven't paid a single rent check yet. Think about what year one actually looks like. Student loan payment. First month's rent, last month's rent, security deposit, a car to get to work, furniture, health insurance deductible. By the time they've handled all of that, there's almost nothing left to save. And then, on top of all of this, interest rates went up. In 2022 and 2023, mortgage interest rates in America climbed above 7%, the highest they had been in over 2 decades. Here's what 7% actually means. A $400,000 mortgage at 7% interest. The monthly payment is over $2,600. Every month, for 30 years. That's before property taxes, before homeowners insurance, before any maintenance, before the water heater breaks. The total amount repaid over 30 years? Over $620,000 for a $400,000 house. Suddenly, renting that same house for $1,800 a month doesn't sound foolish. It sounds rational. And that's exactly when a different kind of calculation begins inside millions of American minds. Now let's talk about what the numbers alone don't tell you. Because there is a fear that lives inside the American renter. A quiet, constant fear. They watch their landlord raise the rent every year. Sometimes 5%. Sometimes 10%. Sometimes, in cities like New York or San Francisco, the rent doubles in less than a decade. They know they could receive an eviction notice. They know the building could be sold. They know this space, where they sleep, eat, and raise their children, doesn't actually belong to them. So they don't repaint the walls. They don't renovate the kitchen. They don't plant a garden. Because the moment they leave, they'll have to undo all of it. Patch the holes. Restore the white walls. Give back every improvement they made. This is not a home. This is a borrowed life. And yet, they stay. Because the other fear is just as real. The fear of being locked in, of committing to 30 years of debt, of being chained to one city, one neighborhood, one life. Americans today change jobs more often than any generation before them. The average person will change careers, not just jobs, but entire careers, between 5 and 7 times in their lifetime. Buying a house in one city when your career might take you somewhere else in 3 years is a gamble, a $400,000 gamble, and one generation already saw how that gamble ends. In 2008, the American housing market collapsed. Millions of families who had done everything right, who had worked hard, saved up, bought a house, lost everything. Not from laziness, not from recklessness, from trusting the system. Home values dropped 30%, 40%, sometimes more. People owed more on their mortgage than the house was even worth. They couldn't sell. They couldn't refinance. They couldn't leave. Families who thought they had built security found themselves trapped, and many of them lost the homes anyway. That crisis left a mark, especially on the generation that was young enough to watch it happen to their parents. They saw the American dream turn into a nightmare in real time. And they made a decision, sometimes consciously, sometimes not, that they would never allow themselves to be that vulnerable. Not to a mortgage, not to a market, not to any system they couldn't control. So they rent, and they keep renting, not because they failed to achieve the dream, but because the dream failed them first. Today, a new term has entered American culture: forever renters. These are not people who gave up. These are not failures. Many of them are educated, financially aware, and fully capable of understanding the trade-offs. Some invest the money they would have spent on a down payment in diversified portfolios instead. Some use it to start businesses. Some use it to stay mobile, to follow opportunity wherever it leads. But underneath all of that strategy, the fear remains. The fear that at 65, they'll have nothing to show for a lifetime of rent checks. The fear that housing costs will keep rising until renting is no longer even affordable. The fear that they did everything right and still couldn't build a life that felt stable. And perhaps the deepest fear of all, that the American dream was never really designed for everyone. That it was always a promise with conditions. Conditions that kept changing. Conditions that millions of people could never quite meet. Behind the American dream, there is a fear most people never talk about. Not the fear of poverty, not the fear of failure. The fear that you worked your whole life, did everything they told you to do, and still ended up paying someone else's mortgage. If you've ever felt that fear, you're not alone. Millions of Americans feel it every single month. Quietly, behind closed doors, on the other side of a lease they didn't want to sign.